Okay, so I really wanted to talk to you today about impact stories. What are impact stories? And we're not talking about just animation. The reason why I wanted to be a little bit more broad-based is because I believe that the people who over here, the students over here, are from various faculties. They are from various streams. There are some from UI, UX, and some are from car design, somebody from other design aspects, and from architecture and from other things. Um, it is important to understand, therefore, what is an impact story, because it applies to everything, every single stream, including the business stream that we are talking about. The universe is made up of stories and not atoms. This is really the maxim that I think all businesses, creative people, and even intellectuals, even nations, they follow this, because nations is also made up of stories. We already have a story about ourselves. We believe that we are headed in a certain direction. We have a certain opinion about ourselves. We have a certain opinion, a certain worldview about things around us. And that story is the story that we live every single day. Of course, we change it as we go along, but it is important to understand that we are the story that we live every single day. And this extraordinary quote by Plato, which says, "Those who tell stories rule society." Now, what does that mean? If you see who's ruling society today, which narrative is the most predominant, which is the American narrative, you will see that their movies, their stories, their power, their soft power is so powerful and so omnipresent and so pervading all over the place that the reason why America is a superpower is not because they have the nuclear weapons and not because just they have the latest technology, which even Europe has. But the European narrative is so fragmented because there are so many countries, and each one of them have their cultures and subcultures. And they are, yes, a block, but they are a fragmented block. And therefore, it is important to understand that if you are a storyteller, you can rule society, and that is important to understand. And I'm not talking about if you're a filmmaker or you're a communication person or you're a whatever. If you can communicate your stories through any field that you're in, and that is important to understand. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey. So my father was actually an Indian animation pioneer. So yes, I'm a Nepo kid in that sense. And I come from a background of privilege. In 70s, when there was no animation whatsoever, my father was actually one of the 4 or 5 animators that India had. And he made this wonderful film called The Climb, which is, of course, our studio is called Climb Media today. And Climb Media, of course, he'd done some amazing work, and I'm sure you recognize this film of his, which is Ek Chidiya Anek Chidiya. So he was also a person who won 16 national awards for his works, right? So I came from a privilege. I still come from a privilege. So I may have got 6 national awards, but my father got 16, and some sort of burdened by that legacy, which I try to live every single day. But we did also the India's first computer-aided animation series called Vartaman in '94. I don't know if people actually remember this series. It was a 26-part series that we did. And it was a series that had live action and animation. In 3D animation and 2D animation way back in '91 when we started work in that. We had this kind of a thing going on then. And we did Lok Gatha, which was again a 13-part series there. I attended Sheridan College, which is the best in the world, in '94. And I did a 3-year animation filmmaking program, and that's where it shaped my ideas. And of course, I started to get into the impact space, where I did films for National Film Board of Canada. And National Film Board of Canada, I did these 2 films. One of the films, Commerce Trade, actually won the national award as well. You may have seen, yeah. So I did more than 600 commercials, right? And that was my way. So Fido is one of the hundreds of commercials that I've done. And you may have seen many of my iconic works on television. Of course, credits don't come in ad films, so you would not know what I have done, what I have not done. But that was my way of sustaining to create the kind of impact work that I wanted to kind of fund myself, because the kind of work that I wanted to do was not available. There was no funding available for it. And therefore, the money was coming from advertising, and that was being cross subsidized into creating what I really wanted to do. Also did some music videos. This is the one that actually got nominated for Screen Awards as well. I'm going to quickly run through it. A lot of you may have been grown up on Chota Birbal, which was India's first animated series on Cartoon Network in 2002. And then subsequently, of course, Chota Bheem came in 6 years later. So we were ahead of our times, and we didn't do well in terms of, we did exceedingly well in terms of being there with the audience, but from a monetary perspective, we really didn't do well because we were ahead of the curve at that time. But Chota Birbal not only has the distinction of being the first Indian animation series to be on an international platform like a Cartoon Network, but it also has the distinction of being the first animated character to be licensed, which is that we had 10 licensing books, and we had 10, we sold the licensing rights to Egmont, and we had a lot of other things going. We had 19 licensing products where we created mugs and cups and t-shirts and whole kind of things. And this is for the first time that an Indian animated character was actually doing all of this, right? Okay, so in 2001, when I was studying in Canada, right, I was, over the weekend, I was attending something called the Toronto Animated Image Society, TAIS. And over there, I saw, and remember, this is the time, the 90s is the time that Indian animation was really, really nascent. There were hardly 8, 9 animators over here, right? Ramon was there, my father was there, and there were a few other people. And when I attended those sessions, I went to the TAIS forum, and I saw how filmmakers and people who are storytellers were generously sharing from their lives. They were generously sharing, and they were talking about the techniques, they were talking about how they got their funding for the film. So they would talk about their films, and they would talk about everything else. And I was stunned because in India, we did not have a platform like this. Forget about a platform. We didn't even have an industry at that time. So when I came back, and there were a few fledgling studios that had just started up, and I spoke to all of them, and I said, why don't we, because we're not an industry at all right now in 1999 is when I started the conversation. And I said, why don't we get together, and why don't we start doing workshops for people who want to get into animation? Remember, this is a time that there were no animation institute. There was no Mac, there was no Framebox, there was nothing. There was no place that you could learn animation except for NIT, which accepted only 10 students. And so everybody got together, the industry got together and rallied behind, and we created the Animation Society of India, which today, 22 years later, has more than 5,000 members, right? And we have done more than 1,000 events. My term from 2001 to 2005 actually was a time that I did about 70 workshops and master classes, and also started the first chapter of an animation festival called AniFest, which runs even today, right? And of course, we have had at least 1 lakh or maybe more people who attended our sessions over the years. Each of those AniFest events has a footfall of about 15,000 people coming in every single year. So it was a huge way to make an impact in the society. So making impact, creating impact is not just through films, but you can do it through rallying the industry. You can talk about how you can create a difference and change things in different ways, in your own specific way. You can create organizations, you can create bodies, you can do whatever you want to do. Yeah. One of the things that when I was studying in Canada, one of the things that really impressed me was, I don't know if many of you know, but after Disney died in 1967, till the mid 80s, animation was dead because people thought that animation will not survive. Now, why am I talking about this? Is because people, at least 5 people, who, ever since I've entered, have said, why is the Indian animation industry not picking up, right? And which is exactly the reason why I was telling myself, when I came back from Sheridan, I had a very lucrative job offer there, but I chucked it up to make sure that I come to India because this is the place that I could make a difference. This is where I could actually impact things because there was nothing over here. I could start something here. And one of the films that impressed me was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I'm sure many of you all have seen it. Now, why is this film important? This film is important because it led the revival of animation in the West. So, what Warner Brothers came out with was the fact that they decided that they wanted to bring animation back. And the way they decided was to do a live action animation, get a celebrity like Bob Hoskins to act in it, who will draw the audience in, and package it with animation in a very unique proposition. And that is what they came up with. And of course, the film was a roaring success, and it completely transformed the industry. People were saying, no, 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 animation doesn't work, and animation is dead, and Disney's gone, and everything. Animation came back with a huge revival, and I'm sure you've seen many of the films after that, which came in the late 80s, right through the 90s, and you see the Pixar movement and everything. So the revival of animation happened with Who Framed Roger Rabbit internationally, right? And I thought to myself, if animation has to be instated, not reinstated here, if it has to take root in India, maybe a good idea would be to use the Bollywood power, to use the power of Bollywood, and see if I can get celebrities to act with my cartoons and come up with a unique live action animation idea. So this is the, sorry. So this is the first ever sketch that was made. Of course, it's a cheesy one. 2007, which is what I want to share with you, because the basic concept was that Ajay Devgan gets stuck in this world of cartoons, and these cartoons are his child's favorite cartoons. Now, his child doesn't have a very good opinion about him because he thinks all doubles are doing his stunts. So Ajay Devgan has now got this opportunity to redeem himself in the eyes of his son, to actually save his favorite cartoons from the bad guys, from the tuna source, the Dave Toons and the tuna source. So I thought it was an excellent opportunity to actually bring animation to the fore. And I proposed to Ajay Devgan and Kajol, and they agreed, and they all became a part of it. And we shot for 114 days. So this film was something that was again far ahead of its time. At a time when I went to the biggest studios, including Prana, including Maya Studios, and everybody said, are you crazy? You expecting this to be done in India? I said, no, this is what India needs right now. Because if we are to revive animation, it's not going to happen with creating a whole 3D or a 2D animation feature film, because nobody's going to come. People are going to come to watch the stars. They're not going to come to watch animation. And we can sneak in animation through the back route. Anyway, so we started working on Toonpur in 2007, and it took 4 long years and 11 studios to actually make the film. It was a long journey. You can see the green screen up there, and you can see the final output. So a lot of work, lot of important things went in there. A lot of the best teams. I had to personally train the teams. I had to personally train the animators, because there was no training offered at any international level at that time. And so I had to train them for months before they could actually get on to their shots. So we did a very, very long process of that. But the whole idea was behind it was that if Toonpur works, then it kickstarts the Indian animation. And that's the impact that the film can create. So in 2010, finally, around December, the film released. The film did not do well at the box office, but even today, it is a roaring success on television, because it's primarily meant for children. And most parents did not want to go to the theaters to take their children for the movie. But the children are, even today, after 12 years of the film having been produced, are still watching the film every single day. So it's running on many, many channels, and it's doing phenomenally well. So Toonpur did impact the industry in a lot of ways, of course, and there are subsequently, I think it also put in a lot of trained manpower, and also put in a lot of faith back in the industry. I embarked on a different journey, because I was like, I think I'm done with trying to push Indian animation into the space. Now, I was always connected with social themes and social causes, and I've been making films for Childline, I've been making films for Save the Children, I've been making films for USAID, I've been making films for UNICEF, international, like the first one that I talked about, Trade, which won the national award, was for UNICEF International and National Film Board of Canada. So I then subsequently went into trying to make short films that could empower and change society. And Komal 2014, when I made this film, it was on child sexual abuse. Now, child sexual abuse, no big deal, but a film on child sexual abuse for children, that can only be done in animation, because otherwise it becomes too gross. And the film did exceedingly well, because it won me my sixth national award in 2015. And also it has thank you, it has become compulsory viewing in all schools. So UNHCR also commended the film as the best film ever made on child sexual abuse for children, shown in 30 international languages, dubbed in 30 international languages, 17 Indian languages, all available on YouTube, including accessible versions. And so the film had a phenomenal success, and I still get the film sometimes as a WhatsApp forward, or I know that many of the children I meet, they tell me that they have seen the film in their schools. It's been shown to them because it's part of their mandatory viewing. So that is something that we did. Okay, so we then I did this film called on child marriage, on many other things, on child labor, and we did films on, again, on child abuse. I got into feature films, live action feature films. This was on social entrepreneurship, but a man who starts a dhaba, wayside dhaba, and asks the children to teach, ask the customers to teach the children of the village instead of paying for the food. This won 7 international awards and was shown in 26 major festivals across the world. Something very interesting came up while in 2015, 2016, when I was making the feature film. I met this man. He was an extraordinary guy. And his name is Tariq. And he's one of the people who has actually changed my life significantly. I was part of his fellowship program called Aspire Circle, where all the top 125, 150 social leaders of the country are there in the fellowship. It's a by invite, and I'm there because I made a lot of films on social causes. And Tariq was there, and Tariq actually works with the homeless. So it's the first time I actually came to know that there are draconian laws that govern us. That, you know, if you are on the street, you're a criminal because the law says so. The law, and there are 70 million people. The law is an anti-beggary law, which is a draconian act, which actually says that if you're poor and if you're destitute and you're living on the streets, you're basically can be arrested for suspicion of beggary. And then you can be put in jail for 10 years without a trial. And so there are 70 million unwanted stateless people. Just to put a perspective, the population of France is 67 million people. So when we talk about India being a superpower, we really cannot leave these 70 million people. And the number was startling, and I decided to do something about it. So I decided to make a film on it. The film was called The Invisible Visible, and it's basically the invisibles of the street, which is how, you know, the people who are living in the streets, that's what it is. And of course, the film won 3 international awards as well. And we shot for about 52 days across India. We just finished the film last year, and the film has had a huge impact, apart from the fact that now 500 crores has been sanctioned by the government, because a lot of the sensitization has happened, some of it due to the film, but largely because of the stakeholders. So the film, it becomes a vehicle for change as well. That is important to understand, that what you're creating and the story that you're weaving or the narrative that you're putting out there can create social impact and create social change. So the policymakers, actually, the Ministry of Social Justice, the secretary, he saw the film, he moved to tears, and he said, I want to kind of help this cause. And he came in and he pitched in a lot of money. And as I said, 500 crores has been sanctioned by the government now as a pilot project over 10 cities. And this film is actually being used as a tool to train those people who are going to be working with the homeless. So where a area that nobody, no social worker wanted to get in, all of a sudden now everybody wants to get in, because people have started to realize, because of the film and other things around it, people started to realize that you can actually, it is an important cause, and the cause has been highlighted, and the narrative around it has changed, and more people are getting into the space. Of course, we had some really glowing reviews, um, and I just want to share the trailer quickly.
The TIS audit brought to notice the allegations of sexual abuse that was going on at the Muzaffarpur shelter home.
And you were having children being abused the way they were. How does this country even survive?
But these are people we see every single day of our life, even we live in a city, and we see and we look away.
So shelters are the municipal authorities' responsibility, and they have to do that so that they don't have to live like this on the streets.
And the anti-beggary legislation, for them it is a nuisance. And that nuisance gets converted into criminality because of the law. The law makes poverty into a crime.
इनका कहना है कि अगर हमें शेल्टर मिलता है, फिर हम यहाँ पे दिखेंगे कभी तो हमको जो सजा देनी है दे दो।
एक 4-5 लीटर अकेल घास लेट लेके आ जाओ, हमारे फैमिली के साथ बच्चों के साथ बैठते हैं, हमको जला दो, ना धरती पे रहेंगे और ना तुम घड़ी घड़ी हमारे को आके सताओगे।
बहुत खुशी हो रही है कि दादी अच्छे से घर जा पाई।
ऐसा लगता है कि यार रास्ते बहुत सारे, बस हम खोजते नहीं।
These are our girls. It is our responsibility as a state to look after these girls. I have met girls who have been raped 20 times a day.
हमारे लिए कोई लड़ने वाला नहीं है, तो हमको खुद के लिए खुद से लड़ना है।
आज तक भी सरकार किसी की नहीं हुई, हमारी क्या हुई?
आपको डंडा लेके यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं आप।
हम कुत्ते के लिए देखे, आइए कितने कुत्ते हैं, आइए
सुनिए ना, हमारा जिंदगी के बीत गया शेल्टर पे।
नहीं पैसे हो गए, ये लोग बच्चे लोग लाइफ के आगे के लाइफ नहीं होना चाहिए।
हम सरकार से अपने लिए आश्रय का मांग रखेंगे और हम आश्रय लेके रहेंगे। तो मुझे लगता है हमें पूछना बहुत जरूरी है कि क्या गरीब इंसान को जीने का अधिकार नहीं है? जैसे पोलियो ड्रॉप पिलाते हैं, सारे गरीब लोगों को जाके इंजेक्शंस के थ्रू उसको मारना शुरू कर देते हैं।
आप इंसान को जानना सीखो बस।
Put the PPT back up. So yeah, you can see that one film can actually change so much. And among all the works that I have done so far, this is, can you put the PPT back up? All the films that I have done so far, this is the one that I cherish the most. This is the one that I hold closest to my heart in terms of, and this is the one that fulfills me the most, because so much of impact and change the film has been able to bring into the society, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done. And of course, I just want to end by saying that we're at the end of the day, we're just, all of us are stories, you know, and make sure you have a good one, you know, you make your story a good one. Thank you.